Welcome back to Just Chattin', and this is the series of videos we do on Thursday and Sunday evenings just for our own amusement. So, for all you Audie fans, he is around. He is in the hall, on the floor, on the rug, basking in a pool of sunshine. I think the reason he's in the hall and not outdoors is because even though I am filming this early in the day, it's going to get up to 92 degrees out. From my Celsius friends, that's 33. So it's going to get very, very hot today, and I think it's already a little too warm for him outside. And I'm not holding out much hope for the poor kitty, but, you know, I guess what we are in for, in the words of William Faulkner, is a long, hot summer. So I expect we're going to have more of Audie hiding in the house and getting his sunshine through the safety and security of an open window and a cool house. All right, we are going to take a quick look at the intro. We will be right back. So, it looks like somebody figured out I was filming and had to come and make an appearance. So, I'm going to let him stay for a little while as long as he's quiet. I thought we would begin by talking about Nutmeg and the Sock Puppets' fake royal tour to Australia, because it is both very fake and very royal. So I thought we'd start off with the very royal part, because as an American, this sort of thing doesn't really interest me one way or another. In other words, I don't have a dog in this fight. This is not my royal family, and no matter which of the royals might show up in my little one-horse town, it wouldn't be a royal visit here. However, I'm sure for the Australians it does make a big difference. So, according to Australian sources, Nutmeg and the Sock Puppet are being addressed as Duke and Duchess and Ma'am and Sir, and people are bowing and curtsying. And I can only imagine Nutmeg must be lapping this up like honey, because we all know that's what she wants. She wants that status, the adulation. You know, this is what she lives for. This is what she married the sock puppet for. So she's thrilled. And I have to say that in terms of the Australian coverage, it's a mixed bag. Some people are just fine with this. And like I say, not my circus, not my monkeys. People are free to deal with this however they see fit and however their own protocols in terms of dealing with royals are concerned. Here in the United States, I get into trouble every time I say this, but we do not bow and curtsy to royals. We don't do it. And quite frankly, if I had met the late Queen, which I did not have that pleasure, and I loved the late Queen, I would not have curtsied, because I have met American presidents, and I did not curtsy to them. We don't do that. And furthermore, for those of you who I know are going to complain in the comments section, she wouldn't have expected it. Certainly not from an American. But according to the palace sources, she didn't expect that from anybody, including her own subjects. She took people as they presented themselves. So, what can I say? If this is okay with some sections of the Australian public, fine. If it's not okay with others, I consider that entirely an internal Australian matter. But I did find it amusing, because these are the same people who, when they broke away from the royal family, said, well, we're just Harry and Meghan. Yeah, that lasted, didn't it? So that's the royal part. Let's talk about the fake part. Well, it's very clear that all of the appearances in this faux royal tour have been very carefully curated. They are all exceedingly performative. And in fact, we know they are all about enhancing Nutmeg and Harry's personal brand. So what's going on over there? Well, they started off with a visit to a children's hospital that was just astoundingly orchestrated. People lined up, waiting, sick children pulled out of their hospital beds. And the funny thing is, the real royals don't handle these things in such a way. We saw plenty of that when Diana was doing hospital visits. She would go into the hospital rooms of the patients. She would sit beside them in their beds. She never had an expectation that a sick person was going to get up out of their hospital bed to come greet her. That wasn't what she was there for. She wasn't there to be greeted. She was there to greet them. That's the difference between her and her son and his wife. But it's not just about the royals. It's also about celebrities. And celebrities do make hospital visits. And the reason I'm throwing celebrities in there is because, quite frankly, since I don't think Nutmeg and the Sock Puppet are royals anymore, I think they had their shot, they walked away. Celebrities often go into hospitals, especially children's hospitals. And in fact, the Make-A-Wish Foundation is famous for hooking sick kids up with their favorite, Marvel superheroes, for example, or Pirates of the Caribbean. And other people, like Taylor Swift, is also known for showing up in hospital rooms, dealing with the children. These are not curated visits. In other words, you're not seeing the beautiful backdrops and the kids all gussied up in pretty fresh bathrobes. You see the messiness of a working hospital in the background. You see medical equipment. You see nurses in scrubs. You're not seeing a staged event like Nutmeg and the Sock Puppet have produced. Now, we all know that if Nutmeg's social media isn't already full of these pictures, it will be very, very soon. But make no mistake about it, very curated, very performative, and entirely staged. They also went off, Nutmeg went off to ladle out soup at a soup kitchen, which is very typical of the Sussexes' charitable activities. They bill themselves as humanitarians, so they will show up at a random soup kitchen, ladle out 2 plates of soup for the photo op, go away, and never be seen again. And that's what's going on in Australia. It's like, I'm going to show up, I'm going to ladle soup out. That nobody believes this is actually how Nutmeg and the Sock Puppet spend their free time. We know it isn't. And I don't even understand what the point is, because even the photos are so contrived. Showing up in designer clothing, handing out soup. Please, even if they did this sort of thing on a regular basis, they certainly wouldn't be doing it in several $1,000s worth of designer clothes and absolutely unaffordable jewelry. So we have to be mindful of the fact that it's nothing but photo ops with homeless people, with sick children. Of course, Harry also went off to a veterans event. Naturally, he had to wear his medals. Oh, and I looked it up, by the way. He usually wears 4 medals. One was for serving, for doing his tours. That's it. Nothing else. This is not like a medal for heroism or anything like that. And 3 of them were basically for being the Queen's grandson. They were Jubilee medals. So yeah, Harry shows up as, the little toy soldier. That irritated me because we're getting very close to Anzac Day. And I said I would be extremely distressed if they brought their inauthenticity to one of the very few holidays that I observe. So, I'm not okay with that. But still, it's Harry. Obviously, he's going to show up at veterans events. Why? Because he has 2 things that he uses to define himself. One is veteran, regardless of how little service he actually performed. And the other, of course, is Dead Diana. And he played the Dead Diana card yet again. I don't even understand why people are tolerating this anymore. It's beyond me why people don't say, if you are almost 30 years after the death of your mother still this traumatized, you should sign yourself into a hospital, because he should. That's just the reality. And as you all know, I've made this comparison before, I lost my father when I was about the same age he was when he lost his mother. And you know what? It's not easy, but you get past it because it's in the nature of things. He is not getting past it. I was never able to monetize the death of my father, to be honest with you. Just the thought of that turns my stomach. But certainly he is still selling his dead mother to anyone who will pay the price of admission. So I also wanted to pick up on something else that is tangentially related to this, because the Royal Grift did a video, by the way, linked in the video notes along with the sources as always. So if you want to check this out, go check it out. She took apart statements the sock puppet made at a Movember event. I had to look that up. And it is men growing mustaches, and I'm not kidding about this, and women standing up to support men, presumably for growing mustaches. I don't know what this is about. I have to say, the explanation from the organization that has sponsored this seems very frivolous to me, and I'm not sure why men growing mustaches is such a noteworthy thing. But be that as it may, their charity, their rules. He started speaking about the putative children. So, as I say, go check out the Royal Grift. And she had one take on this. Now, this has happened in the past, that she and I have been researching the same topic simultaneously and come up with very different interpretations. So her interpretation of the sock puppet's comments when he speaks about the baby and these children instead of my baby and my children is that it's virtually a confession of the fact that these children did not come into the world the way everyone has been told they have. Now, I don't dispute that. I will say, however, I took something different out of this. And these are not mutually exclusive. In other words, her interpretation and my interpretation could both very well be correct. It's not, you have to pick and choose. The interpretation I made from his statements was not so much what he said, but how he said it. The sock puppet was talking about the putative children in much the same way. People going into a relationship with someone who already has children talks about them. A prospective step-parent will talk about, I didn't know how I was going to be able to relate to the child. I didn't know where I would fit in with these children, how I could, become part of their life, have them become part of my life. That's what I got from it. Now, obviously, that is not one of the many scenarios that has been advanced. And I don't think that the sock puppet being step-parent is. What I got from that was that alienation that a step-parent often feels going into a pre-existing family, feeling like they are on the outside and have to make their way into this group. What I take from this is I'm going to go back and take a closer look at all of those rumors that were circulating on forums like Quora and Reddit and places like that. And they started circulating a couple of years ago and really began gaining traction, maybe last year at this time, I would say, it's a guess, that the sock puppet is no longer living with Nutmeg, that he is no longer in that family home. If you can call this odd collection of X number of bedrooms and X number of bathrooms, and what was it Nutmeg was saying? 80 staff members around the rented kitchen, and 2 putative children, and Lord knows how many nannies, and Doria, and whatever. But the interpretation I made from this was, it really sounds to me like he is literally on the outside. That level of, this is not the family I am interacting with on a daily basis. So I thought I would throw that out there because I personally like being able to look at the same information as interpreted by different people. And as I say, the Royal Grift and I have done this many times before when we've been researching the same things, looking at the same information. And she will come up with one spin on it, I will come up with another. And they're not contradictory, they're just different. In fact, I would say in many cases they are complementary. So I wanted to throw that out because I would love it if you would go over and take a look at her video and see what you think about it. Is this a confession that these are not his children? Because nobody else seems to be picking up on this. She is once again the lone voice in the wilderness. But is that your take on it, that he's pretty much confessing that the stories they've put out about the birth of the putative children is not correct? Or is it possible there is another interpretation that might go along with this? And I would say what I'm hearing is he's not part of that group. Maybe he never was. Maybe he recently became disenfranchised from that group because the way he was speaking about it struck me as the way a step-parent talks about it, an existing family, but not quite part of it. So anyway, I thought I would throw that out, mostly because it does surprise me that so far, as far as I can tell, the Royal Grift is the only person who is picking up on his language and his confusion and alienation when he talks about parenting. And of course, he always claims to be a very involved parent, but they're in Australia, once again, far away from home, kids left behind. Nobody seems to be concerned about that. They can go out, spend their time in hospitals with other people's children, with apparently no regard of who is back at home with the children they are alleging are theirs. Curiouser and curiouser. Okay, that is what I have for you today. We are going to take a look at a slideshow on the way out. Thank you for being with us. We did get a few minutes of Audie time, which I was not expecting. So I hope to see you all next time, and in the meanwhile, have a terrific day.